Good morning. September 18th will be the most important day in Scotland's history, but I, a Scot living in London, won't have a vote. Look at the Union Jack, take out the St Andrew's Cross and it looks very different. The Act of Union of 1707 marked the beginning of the UK. A victory for the yes side would result in the breakup of Britain. Do we really want to make our neighbours, friends and families citizens of a different state to us, i.e. foreigners? That's what they'd become, that's what I'd become. Although it would be the near abroad, it would make Scotland seem further away to me. I don't want my family to have a different passport to me. We are the same family, so we should be the same nationality. Yes, we are all Scottish, but independence would affect my personal identity. Identity isn't just about how you think of yourself, it's also dependent on how others view you. English people here in London would perhaps view me as less British, or perhaps not even British at all, if Scotland voted to leave the UK. It would be alienating to no longer be considered part of the same club as the people I work and socialise with. I don't want to be an exile in my own country, or for my status to be akin to an Irish person, no disrespect, living in London. The difference is that Scotland, Wales and England are all in the same island. We have shared institutions that Scots have helped create. As one reader wrote in to The Guardian, "Why knock down a house we ourselves have built?" Alex Salmond disagrees with this and says that the social union between the nations will remain. But that's all dependent on the other side in negotiations agreeing with him. As Ed Miliband pointed out, if an independent Scotland had a different immigration policy to the rest of the UK, then border controls would have to be put up. Together we are stronger isn't just a cliche or a slogan. Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and England all benefit from shared resources. The BBC was founded by a Scotsman, John Reith. The Bank of England, also founded by a Scotsman, William Paterson. Team Scotland had a successful Commonwealth Games. On the bigger stage of the 2012 Olympic Games, there was one day when Scots had won more medals than athletes from England. For me, being Scottish is part of being British. In India, some people referred to the empire as the Scottish Empire. The tea industry in Sri Lanka was founded by a Scotsman, James Taylor. The biggest trading company in Hong Kong, Jardine Matheson, was set up by two Scotsmen. Scotland punches above its weight as part of the UK. My paternal grandfather worked on the shipyards on the River Clyde, where a quarter of the world's ships were once built. My maternal grandfather worked in Africa. It's they who helped put the great in Britain. Were Scotland to vote for independence, it would have to start up its own new institutions, for instance an army, intelligence service and overseas consular service. Independence means you break away on your own. Breaking apart doesn't sound like a good way to have a better relationship. Negotiations probably wouldn't all go smoothly. The process of separation could lead to people in the rest of the UK feeling less positive about Scotland and so more inclined to play hardball. It is inconsistent of Alex Salmond to propose the withdrawal of the nuclear deterrent from Fastlane on Clydeside and want Scotland to be protected by the same deterrent. To be protected by something it has got rid of. Scotland would be less secure, the rest of the UK would be less protected if Scotland left the UK, and its clout in the world would be reduced. For instance, possibly lose its permanent seat on the UN Security Council. That's how important a role Scotland plays within the UK. When I visited the Kyle Centre shopping mall on Ayr High Street this Christmas, it struck me how many of the shops at headquarters in London. Trade is made easier by the lack of borders. That is one of the main principles of the European Union. For years, the SNP mantra has been independence in Europe. Scotland separating from the rest of the UK would be European disintegration. As a new state that has broken away from an existing member state, Scotland would no longer be in the EU. I think that in time Scotland would become a member of the EU, but there would be a period of limbo before that. For instance, the Spanish government not wanting to encourage Catalan independence. When Scotland did join the EU, it would be a small player. It would no longer be able to benefit in international negotiations from being part of a big player with a similar level of bargaining power as France or Germany. That would mean laws drafted in Brussels could potentially be less advantageous to Scotland. In today's globalised world, the real politique is that small countries have less clout against multinational companies than larger countries. The devolved powers the Scottish Parliament already has, and the promise of more devolution, are an acknowledgement of Scotland being a separate country from England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Some policies in Scotland are markedly different from other parts of the UK. For instance, in education and healthcare, that can continue after a no vote. Some people suggest that there has been a gradual political realignment, with Scotland and England diverging. As a Scot in London, I don't think that Londoners are any less progressive than Glaswegians. The yes side tactic of promoting a yes vote as a way to get rid of the current Tory government is very short term. Independence would be a permanent solution to the temporary problem of the current Conservative administration. George Osborne really might not be bluffing when he says that Scotland couldn't use the pound as part of a currency union. Even an independent Scotland with a currency union with the remainder of the UK would have less influence over monetary policy than if it remained part of Britain. Less influence on interest rates, less influence on mortgage rates. That's not independence, that's dependence. As another reader wrote in to the Evening Standard, Craig Berry of Sheffield University said, quote, "The great tragedy of the Scottish independent campaign is that, if successful, it will reinforce Scotland's subservience to Whitehall. The SNP plans for a currency union will make Scotland's economy subject to the whims of England's monetary policy." End quote. Spain, Italy and France are still independent states, even though they're in a currency union, the euro. But they have less economic independence than before. A shared currency means a greater need for cooperation and negotiation between the different governments on spending. That's why there have been calls for greater political union between the members of the single European currency. We already have that as part of the United Kingdom. One evening in June, I went to a debate in the City of London on the referendum. As I walked there, I stopped at a plaque commemorating William Wallace. It saluted his fight for Scotland's liberty. The difference today is that, thankfully, Scotland is not an oppressed nation. I then walked a few metres and turned into a street called Little Britain. Surely that is what we could become. People sometimes define themselves by comparing themselves to their neighbours. They accentuate the differences. That's human nature. As was argued by the Mayor of Liverpool, the people of Glasgow have more in common with people in Liverpool and Manchester than they do with people in Orkney and Hoying. Are we really that different from people in Cardiff and Belfast that we want to separate from them? A Welshman, Northern Irishman and Scotsman go into a pub. What did the Welshman and Northern Irishmen say to the Scotsman. Foreigner. I oppose independence because it would not make the people of Scotland more powerful in the wider world. Being able to turn the volume up higher on the TV in your living room, but your neighbour could compel you to turn the volume down. As Ruth Davidson, leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, said, the SNP propose that everything will change and nothing will change. For instance, keep the Queen and the BBC. They are wanting to have their cake and eat it. Great party, shame about the hangover. The Yes side are offering an illusionary freedom. What they propose won't amount to real independence. The people of Scotland could vote for independence. It's not too wee, too stupid or too poor. But we don't need to. Scotland would have a more prosperous and secure future within the United Kingdom. The crux of the Yes side's argument is that it should just be up to the people of Scotland who is in government. Fine, you can reduce the size of the body politic. Instead, the people of Scotland should look beyond and be part of a larger polity, part of a larger demos, Britain. Thank you very much. Big hug.